I just wanted to pop in and tell you how amazing this year has been for me. It has been just absolutely transformative. And if you've been following me since last year, you're probably wondering, Carly, what is your secret? My friend Linda the other day, back last week, she even told me, it's like, like you just show up and you do these videos and you're just glowing and there's just something about you. And I need to know, what are you doing? Well, it all comes back to my 5 pillars of empowerment that I've developed accidentally. If you wouldn't believe that, I accidentally developed this formula because last year, of course, I was planning to write a book and I wrote my framework and I had the idea of the 5 pillars, but I didn't have them in the right order, first of all. And I also didn't know what exactly I'd stumbled upon. As a doula and childbirth educator over the last 8 years and a birth advocate, I really realized that there were certain things that moms were doing or not doing that determined whether they would get the kind of birth that they really deserved to have, or if they would end up getting tricked into doing things that they didn't want or feeling really disempowered within the system. There's just certain things. Now, obviously, there are a few things that a lot of childcare or childbirth providers they say the same thing. Advocates say this, doulas say this, birth keepers. We understand that the hospital you go into can determine whether or not you're going to have the birth that you want, a natural birth. The care provider you hire, same thing. And obviously knowing how your body works. Like, we know that. Those are the most big determining factors. However, they didn't really talk about the other elements that I discovered myself while working in the birth world and really starting to understand how our minds work, how our bodies work, how the system has basically set us up to be disempowered. And I've been going through a training right now. I mean, I'm always learning, so I'm constantly finding new information. And right now I'm looking for my soulmate and trying to attract that perfect person to me, the one that's going to be a lifelong learner, the one that's going to just lift me up and become that empowered partner who can really allow me to surrender in my power and also complement what I'm doing and to bring his own structure and his own masculine energy to my feminine and be like the yin to my yang. Like, that's what I'm really looking for. And so I've been on a quest over the last, I'd say, since April, really, to start examining what I really want in a partner, what I need in a partner, and noticing what in my life would be enhanced by this partnership. And I've been writing and I've been journaling and I've been manifesting and I've just been taking that energy and tapping into my feminine power. But I took this course. I recently signed up and it's still active if you're curious. Anya Grace, she has this like 5 feminine frequencies. So, but what I was learning really tied into what I've already been picking up, and it just enhanced that. So the idea is that you need to have these certain pillars of empowerment. And our society has very much been about controlling the feminine energy. And birth is all about the feminine energy. And I started to see that. I started really tap into that. And after that empowered birth with my daughter, I really tapped into my power. And I started to realize I can't get put back in that box. That container was too small for me. And I needed to be able to expand in my feminine energy and be able to be in tune with my body. And we've been taught in our society not to be in tune with our body. We've been taught not to listen to our intuition. We've been taught to listen to the experts instead of ourselves. And so we're making decisions from a place of fear instead of a place of power. And the same thing in other aspects of your life too, is that you come from it from a place of fear and you're not looking at all of your options. So when I was developing the 5 pillars of empowerment this year, well, more like basically making it better, optimizing it, I started to realize just what I had discovered over the last 8 years and just what I was doing with it. And this is when I created my Empowered Birth workshops. If you haven't gone through those and you're currently pregnant, or you know somebody who's currently pregnant or planning to have a baby in the next few years, then you want them to get into these workshops because, first of all, they're free. And second of all, it's the best birth education that you could possibly ask for. It fills in the gap. It teaches you exactly how to find a doula. Because one thing that is a real frustration in the doula community is that we get clients that come to us and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a doula. And we're like, okay, so what are you looking for in a doula? And it's like, I don't know, someone to support me during my birth. And it's like, great. That's like baseline here. Like we have other, like, what kind of birth do you want to have? I don't know, a natural birth. Okay, so you haven't done any research. You have no idea. And now it's up to us. Like you've just hired us around maybe 35 weeks. And now we have to try to teach you a crash course on childbirth, and you've already got your care provider and you've already picked where you're going to have your baby, and like we know that like there's only so much that we can do, so much we can work with. So this Empowered Birth workshop, what I do is I really bring in the elements that you really need, and I talk more about the pillars of empowerment. But what are these pillars of empowerment that I keep talking about? Well, the first one, you need to have the right mindset in no matter what you're doing. If it's birth, if it's building a business, if it's leaving a relationship, if it's finding a new relationship, if it's your parenting, you need to have the right mindset. You need to release your limiting beliefs. You need to examine your fears and find out where those fears are coming from. You need to be able to visualize what you want. You need to know what you want. You need to know what you want to have as an outcome and start picturing that and then working your way backwards. Mindset is key. A dear friend of mine has said that 90% of the game is played above the shoulders. And once I heard that, I was just like, hell yes, hell yes. Like, you got it. I will follow you, my friend, because you've really nailed it. And once I took that on in my life, once I started to realize that 90% of the game is played above the shoulders, it's all in the head, it's all in the mindset, that's when things really transformed for me. Because I was no longer in my own way. I was no longer in my doubts. I was no longer in my fears. I was looking forward to what I really wanted. And if I had a fear come up, instead of letting that stop me, I let that inform me of where I needed to grow. So you need to have that right mindset. If you don't have the right mindset, especially in your birth, if you have the mindset of, well, I just have to do what other people tell me to do, and I don't have a strong intuition. Like, first of all, it's a lie. We all have intuition, and birth is all about following your intuition. In fact, the amazing client of mine who had her baby just last week, she followed her intuition. She followed her intuition her entire pregnancy as she was working with me. She followed her intuition even more strongly after she had gone through the Empowered Birth workshop back in June. And she was like, I need to talk to Carly. I need to find out what I can do about this birth plan that I have. And I need to talk to Carly. Like, that was her intuition telling her to talk to me. And she did. She talked to me. And her intuition was telling her, I need to work with Carly. So she worked with me for 3 months, and her fears disappeared. By the end, she was so empowered that she was just saying, okay, so I've got my birth pool and I've got this, and I'm just ready for this baby to come. Like, she was excited. And when she finally went into labor, like, she was just like, I've got this. Like, she knew what to do instinctively. I didn't have to tell her what to do. As a doula, My job is to hold space and to facilitate. But it's her intuition telling her what she needed to do. So she was getting into the positions. So the thing is, you need to have that right mindset. You need to know that you are your own best decision maker. You need to know that you are the one who has everything that you need to birth this baby. You have the body, your baby's inside of you, you've got everything you need to birth. And the rest of it comes with the right education, which is my second pillar of empowerment. The right education is crucial because right now in our birth culture, especially, like you get taught, oh, well, you need to be dilated X number of centimeters. Like you need to be checked multiple times before labor to see if you're going to go into labor by a certain date. You need to have your due date, like all of this stuff that is not actually in line with what actual physiological birth looks like. So you need to have that right education to know what you're really looking at. And the same thing with business is that I knew I needed to have the right education. I can only get so far with my intuition, and I knew that I needed certain key things that would teach me how to do marketing, how to create an email list, how to create a Facebook group, how to get engagement in the group, how to basically get started, and then follow my intuition in addition to that. But I needed to have that training, that education, and I knew I needed to find it in the right way, and I needed to see who could also facilitate that. Same thing for relationships. If you don't know what a healthy relationship looks like, then your intuition is not going to be able to guide you to know what a healthy relationship looks like right off the bat. You may get stuck. So I had to learn what a healthy relationship actually looked like in order to create my vision around it. So all of these pillars actually interconnect. It's not like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. It's all interconnected. It's like almost like a circle. I may have to change the way I talk about these pillars. I may have to find a different wording, but the idea is that like it's all interconnected and you need all of them optimized and they all need to be working together in an integrated way. So having the right education informs your right mindset, and your right mindset will inform your right education. Because if you have it in your head that you don't have the right to go out and seek this information, then you're not going to be in the right mindset to find the right information. You're just going to keep going to those mainstream sources. Certain books that I will not name have the idea that you just need to ask your doctor everything. And so the next one, of course, is the right environment. You need to have the right environment. For birth, this is crucial because in the animal world, in the world with mammals, they need to find an environment that's safe. Well, you are the same. You are a mammal. You need to have an environment that's safe. So if you feel that the hospital that you've chosen is not going to facilitate a physiological birth, you need to know that in advance. And if you know that the birth center that you're at isn't going to support you the way that you want, you need to know that in advance. If you realize that you're called to a home birth, you're called to stay home, then that's your intuition saying, this is where I'm going to feel the safest. So the idea, again, is you need to have that right environment, but it goes beyond just your birthplace. The right environment can also just be who you're hanging around with and where you're spending most of your time. For me, my right environment for even in my business is I need to have the place to be decluttered and clean. So I have a very minimalist way of living now because that's the right environment for me to have my creativity. That's how I'm able to paint beautiful paintings like this behind me, is that I finally have that space and that clarity to do that. And the same thing with birth. If you're in your home, but your home feels very cluttered, you're not going to be able to focus on labor, and maybe labor won't start for you right away. So you want to have a nice, peaceful environment. The next pillar, of course, is you need to have the right facilitators. I used to say you needed the right care provider, but now I've realized that it's more than that as I've been working inside of my programs with my clients, is that it's no. It's the right facilitator. It's someone who has the outside knowledge, who's been where you want to go. So someone who's had the kind of birth that you want to have is a right facilitator. Someone who has knowledge around the kind of birth that you want is a right facilitator. So childbirth educators, doulas, some care providers, but you need to have that right facilitator, because if you're going to somebody and they don't know how to do the thing that you want to do, and they have fear around the thing that you want to do, they're not going to be the right facilitator. So this is so common with moms who want to have a VBAC, is they go to the care provider who allows a VBAC, but that care provider happens to be someone who's only seen a medicalized VBAC, where you're with the epidural and they have a lot of fear around VBAC, and they're like, oh, well, you know, we only do VBAC this way. Well, first of all, let's get into the right mindset again, is that you're not doing, like, they're not doing VBAC. They're sitting back and watching you birth your baby, because babies come out of vaginas. Like, that's the default. So any care provider, and I say this quite often, any care provider who says we don't do vaginal birth of such and such, it's like, okay, so they don't know that babies come out of vaginas when we don't introduce surgery. Like, that's actually how birth works. If you're going to a care provider who doesn't know how birth works and you want to have that physiological birth, it's not going to be a good fit. You don't have the right facilitator. And if you're going with a childbirth education class, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, if you're going to like one of those birth classes that's being taught by the hospital and they only are talking about birth within the hospital system, like, that is not going to be the right facilitator for you if what you're planning is to have a physiological hands-off birth. You want a childbirth class that's going to teach physiological birth. Same thing with a doula. If you've got a doula, and this is a very hands-on doula, but you want a hands-off approach where just somebody's holding space, that's not going to be the right facilitator for you. So you need to have the right facilitator. And this goes for business, this goes for relationships, this goes for therapy, this goes for parenting, this goes for everything. Every single thing in your life can be tied into these 5 pillars of empowerment. You need to have the right facilitators. You need to have someone who's been where you are and who understands the pitfalls and can help guide you, but understands that you are the one who's doing the work. The next one, of course, the very last one, is the right support. And I didn't realize just how crucial this was until I watched it happen over and over again with my clients. Like, there was one client who didn't have the right support, and she had everything else. And in the end, she was talked into having a birth that she didn't want to make other people comfortable. You don't have to do that. But if you don't have the right support around you, if you don't have friends or family or your partner is most crucial, who's going to be able to hold that space for you and let you just do your thing, then there's just going to be problems around that. So for me, I didn't have the right support with my first birth because my partner didn't understand about physiological birth. He wasn't in tune with what was going on. He was very much in the idea that he just had to do whatever they told him to do. They told him to pick me up and put me on the bed, so they put me on the bed. And he put me on the bed, and he's like, well, I didn't know that I could just do something else. And then there's the partners that ask me, it's like, well, you know, she seems like she's in a lot of pain, so like, should we get her something for the pain? And I'm like, okay, but how is she coping? Because I can see that you're scared. But at the same time, like, this isn't about you and your scaredness. You need to be there for your partner. And this is part of the idea of the masculine and feminine energy, which I've also been learning about with this course that I've been taking. And the idea that the true masculine energy, when the man is in his power and how he's supposed to support us, is he's supposed to hold that space and that container and that protection without trying to control. And we've been in this society where there's been more control happening. So we control birth and we control lives and we control parenting. And that's not how it was meant to be. That's not how nature wanted it to be. So what I saw when I was attending this birth that was the right support is that I had prepared this partner to become that container for his wife. And so he was sitting there and he did feel a little nervous. He's like, like this is taking longer than I thought. And like she's making these sounds. And I'm like, okay, but those sounds are normal. And she's doing fine. And look, now she's resting. Like this is okay. Like we're okay. All you have to do is provide that support, that container. So you need to have the right support. And the same thing goes for any aspect of your life. For me, the right support is being in a community of people who are all looking at what I'm doing and saying, just keep going, like you're crushing it, like you're doing it. Instead of the people who are like, why are you doing that? That's pretty scary. You could just go with the status quo. Like you see this all the time in the mom groups as well, where moms will say, hey, I want to have a vaginal birth without the epidural. How do I do that? And what happens? What happens? You know what happens. What happens is that suddenly you get a whole bunch of people and they all say, oh, I couldn't handle a birth without an epidural. Like, don't be a hero. There's no trophy for a natural birth. Or the worst one that I hear is all births are natural. Okay. Missing the point of the definition of the word natural. Yes, it is a birth, but it is not by definition what was intended by nature. And we've really appropriated that term, natural. And I try to stay away from it and I call it a physiological birth, but a lot of people don't know what a physiological birth is. So I have to use the term natural, even though I really despise it. But when I'm talking about natural birth in this sense, I'm talking about a physiological birth. I'm not talking about unmedicated with Pitocin. I'm not talking about unmedicated without Pitocin. I'm talking, but with interventions. I'm talking about you're in your element, you're following your instincts, nobody's touching you, nobody's telling you what to do, you're just birthing your baby, and everybody else is holding space around you. The rarest kind of birth of all that I have personally witnessed as a doula, physiological birth, and also experienced myself. That's what I'm talking about. And when you have a physiological birth, what happens afterwards is you're like, oh my God, like time just stopped. Like I didn't know what was going on, but I was just following my body and I'm so in tune with what's going on and I'm so bonded to this baby and I can just feel and I just know what's going on. I just know what's right and I feel in my power. It's an awakening of feminine power. And what I've noticed is that when you try to control that energy is when it doesn't feel right. And that's when we start to doubt ourselves. And that's when we're like, am I making the right choices? But once you've had a physiological birth, you realize that you've got everything that you need to take care of your family. You've got everything you need to take care of your life and your child, and you know your child inside and out. It's the most amazing transformative experience. And if you've never experienced a physiological birth, like it's really, really hard to explain it. But all I can say is like, you don't go back in that box. And so I discovered this power with the physiological birth, and I discovered the power of the 5 elements, the 5 pillars of empowerment. And then I've applied it to every aspect of my life here. And I've left in a relationship that wasn't serving me. And I've created this home that is just this absolutely beautiful, loving, nurturing home. And I've created a community and I've created a business. And I've done that all with the 5 pillars of empowerment. So why am I teaching you this today? Because it is so powerful. Like you have no idea how powerful this is. When you put all of these elements together, and you really understand how they all work, magic happens. Like it just does. And again, mindset is the most important one. So you want to have the right mindset because they all work together. and you need to have the right education, and you need to have the right environment, and you need to have the right facilitators, and you need to have the right support. And if you want to know more about the birth side of things, I am going to be going deeper on all of these topics. I'm going to be teaching 1 hour per day inside of my private Facebook group. So facebook.com/groups/empowering-moms-birth. And you can sign up for the workshop at www.empoweringmomsbirth.ca/workshop. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be teaching you my basic system of the 5 pillars of empowerment. I'm going to go deep. I'm going to talk about what you need for the right mindset. I'm going to talk about the right education. I'm going to be talking about the right environment. I'm going to be talking about getting the right facilitators and the right support. I'm also going to teach you how to create your birth plan using these 5 pillars of empowerment. So you're not going to want to miss this. This is the same workshop that my beautiful client got to go through. And when she went through this workshop, as I said, she asked about how I could help her with her birth plan. She ended up working with me for 3 months to start. We went and did the one-on-one sessions and prenatal classes. And I helped support her partner as well because I wanted him to also get that education. And when it was baby time last week, they were just on it. Like they were just going through their elements and they would just, they were in the zone is the only way that I can explain it to you. It's like they were in like labor land and nothing could touch that. And just observing them as their doula, like they had it and they did it themselves. And the dad pulled the little baby out of the water afterwards and just brought him to his mother's arms. And it was just the most beautiful experience for that family. And I got off the call with them last night because we were doing a debriefing. And she's just like, I feel fantastic. Like she had had 2 previous C-sections and she was just like, oh my God, like I feel amazing. And I did it myself and I can't believe I did it myself and my body works. And I can't get over the fact that I did it. And so she's going to be sharing her story during this workshop. And I'm going to have some stories from some other moms that I've been helping. I'm going to teach you how to find the right facilitator, the right care providers, and the red flags on what to avoid. I'm going to teach you about how birth actually works and why your cervix is not a crystal ball, but actually a magic 8 ball. And I'll talk more about that inside the workshop. And I'll teach you about how to get past your birth fears. So this workshop starts on November 1st, and you want to be in the Facebook group for it. But because I want to make sure this is accessible to everyone, I also want to let you know that it's going to be on Instagram too. So I'm going to be live on Instagram. Hi, Instagram. And I'm going to be live on Facebook. Hi, Facebook. And if you want to get the workbook, you'll need to be in the Facebook group and you'll need to have signed up for the workshop. And if you want reminders in your inbox to know when I'm going live, you'll also want to sign up for the workshop. But I'm also going to be live on Instagram at 1 p.m. Pacific. So that's 4 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be from the 1st until the 9th. So 1 hour a day, 1st to the 9th, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And you're going to get my entire framework of the 5 pillars of empowerment. And you're going to also hear more about how physiological birth actually works. Because the way that it's been taught has driven me crazy for the last 8 years. And I finally I could not take it anymore. Hearing the stories over and over and over again, seeing the patterns, it broke my heart. And it still breaks my heart every time I see it. So I want this as accessible as possible. And I want you to tell all your friends. And I want you to be here live commenting. As I said, I'm going to have it in the Facebook group and I'm going to also have it on Instagram. So I'll be in 2 places at once. And I'm going to be teaching you that framework. All right. I will see you next week. Hope to see you soon. Bye.